Bằng
Start video.
Hello and welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We've got 10 people here, which is so exciting. I'm very happy to see everybody. Let me just get set up. We'll take a couple of minutes to give everybody some time to join. I know people are quite busy, so they may have just finished their work and then sitting down at a computer. I just hear a little bit of echo. One moment. Great. Okay, welcome audience. Thank you for joining us. It's great to see you. Please let me know in the chat box where you're joining us from. I'm here in Ho Chi Minh City. It is a scorching 37 degrees outside right now, and it says it feels like 41 degrees. So it's not too comfortable, but I'm happy to be inside at least. If you could let us know where you're joining from, I would really appreciate that. And we'll get started in just a few moments. All right. All right, so we have Bac Qua University, some guests from Ho Chi Minh City. All right, fantastic. And more people are coming in. Okay, so it's been a few minutes. We'll let people filter in as as the moments pass by. Hello, Min from Vietnam. Nice to see you. I'd like to get started. So we have a very special guest with us here today, Miss Trinh T. Anh-Hang. My name is Andrew Duenas. You can call me Andy. I'm Senior ELT Consultant for Academic and Training at National Geographic Learning. We're here today to talk about understanding and communicating between different cultures, or basically intercultural communicative competence. Today, we aim to answer some of these questions, such as what are the benefits of intercultural awareness and competence in the English language classroom? And especially, what do teachers and administrators need to know to make this approach successful? I have a very special guest with us who will share her work and the research that she has done on this topic. So let me introduce Ms. Trinh T. Anh-Hang, and I will let her introduce herself. So yeah, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, what's your role, and what you do in the day-to-day?
Thank you, Andy. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. And my name is Trinh Thị Anh-Hang. I'm from Hanoi University of Science and Technology. And at the moment, I am the Vice Dean of Faculty of Foreign Languages. And I'm also a PhD candidate at Hanoi University. And yeah, thanks again for joining us.
Great. And what brought you to Hanoi University of Science and Technology?
Oh, it is a long story. Actually, when I was small, I was brought to Hanoi University of Science and Technology by my father, and at that time, I thought that I would be a student there, but I don't know why. The fate has changed, and I have been the teacher at my university for 26 years.
Wow.
And yeah, that also means that I've been in the teaching career for those years. And though I just work in the same institution for such a long time, but I have a variety of learners. They can be students, they can be PhD candidates, and also people from companies and high school student as well.
Fantastic. So it sounds like you have a wealth of experience in teaching Vietnamese learners in a variety of contexts and from a variety of backgrounds. That's fantastic. So I can't wait to hear more about your work. I just wanted to introduce the audience to our topic, intercultural communicative competence. So if you're not sure what that is, right? it can be a little bit to explain, but I like this figure. It kind of breaks it down easily into 4 different components. You know, the things that we know about other cultures and about social interaction, our attitudes towards unknown or unfamiliar things, skills that we can do, and then just general awareness that we have of the people around us, and how we are operating in the world. So I don't want to take up too much time explaining that to you, but I do have this URL. You can click on that to read about that in more detail if you like. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that it is, I think that it is better to have a definition that is easy for everyone to remember. So I can use a definition given by Biram, the guru in ICC. And so according to Biram, ICC is the competence to communicate with people from diverse cultural backgrounds appropriately and effectively. Yes, so there are 2 keywords that are very easy to remember, that is appropriately and effectively. Yes, and you know that nowadays we do not only interact with people in our countries, but also from different all corners of the world, both personally and professionally. So it is very important to equip ourselves with ICC.
Sure, I totally agree. And I want to just touch on that point where you said appropriately. And I think what's appropriate in one culture or between one group of people is going to change. You know, if you go to another country, or maybe by the age group of people within one country that you are interacting with. So I do think it's very appropriate, important to remember it's interacting appropriately.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I apologize. I just have some quick audio issues, and let me please check on that before we keep going with a lot of other audio interference. Okay. Okay, so we might just have to remember to mute and unmute ourselves when we're talking. That's all right. Okay, so I'd like to talk more about the research that you have done. So I know that you've done some research on language and home culture integrated learning. I saw your talk about that 2 years ago. So could you explain maybe what is language and home culture integrated learning? Oh, sorry, I've muted you, so you'll need to please unmute.
Sorry, sorry, but okay. So yeah, thank you for giving a chance to talk about our research. Actually, this research was done by me and my partner, Mary Ding from University of Albany, State University of Albany in New York. And we start with an idea that individuals learn culture, norms, concepts, and worldviews and identities by adopting to specific ways of life in the first language. So when they learn another language, like learn English, they learn a new system of belief and values. So if the language learning process just focus on the target culture, and ignore their own culture, so there may be a kind of internal conflict among themselves. So by integrating home culture, target culture, and also valuing other culture, so in such a way that they are aware of their own cultures and they understand why they have a certain system belief and values, they can effectively examine other culture, and they also know why people from different culture have a different ways of behaving, of different value and so on. And that is based on that belief, we designed a curriculum in which we integrate home culture and language integrated in an online curriculum. And in this research project, we adopt ideas from our from Vietnamese Zen master and also philosopher thầy Thích Nhất Hạnh, and it is interesting to realize that his belief about the balance of self and other is very similar to ICC, and that is why we adopt his ideas. And in our curriculum, we use the two keywords initiated by thầy Thích Nhất Hạnh, that is understanding and compassion. And we conducted a project naming to be loved, to be understood, or vice versa. And actually, this is like two sides of a coin. You can only love others if you understand them, and vice versa. And in the project, we guide our students to use compassion and understanding as a lens, so that we analyze all the aspects of life in our culture. And in this way, they can have a better understanding of culture, they better understanding of themselves, and also they can be proud of themselves to tell others stories, to tell others their stories in English. Yes, and the finding of the research encourage lots of other teachers to integrate home culture in teaching English.
Fantastic. So I really I want to kind of summarize that, because it's quite a
Yes.
large scope of research that you
Yeah.
did. So the first part you mentioned was you know, when you learn a new language, sometimes you learn a new system of beliefs and cultures. And
Yes.
I think that's definitely applicable to someone who's moved or immigrated to another country, and they start learning that country's language. Maybe they forget their own culture. Is that
Yeah.
kind of right? And of course, we don't want that. We want them to
Yeah.
remember their own culture, right? So I love that idea of, you know, maintaining your identity, even if you're moving to another country or another culture.
Yeah.
Okay. And the second one was, you know, the balance between self and other, that I think those two are quite entwined. And the third important thing that you mentioned was compassion and understanding.
Yes.
I think that's so important, especially when we go back to the intercultural competency components that I showed earlier. That was about attitudes and awareness. So
Yeah.
when students have compassion, they are thinking, you know, how would I feel if this happened to me? What would I do if I was in that person's shoes? So I really like that. So thank you for explaining that that concept of your research. Can you talk a little bit more about how it related to your students, or what were the benefits for your students?
Yeah, actually, my students are also the participant in the study. So they took part in our project, and during the project, they had a lot of chance to talk about them, to examine. As I said, they examine different aspects of life, so that people from different areas in Vietnam have a different customs. So they have a chance to talk about those customs with the pride of their own culture. And let me give you an example. When they talk about Vietnamese áo dài, so they explain how do Vietnamese people understand the body of Vietnamese women, so that they can design such graceful áo dài, and they can distinguish the different features of Vietnamese áo dài and sườn xám, the Chinese typical Chinese traditional costume. So they can point out the different features, and they also can point out why they have those different features. Yes, and in that way, they have their very unique story to share with others. Though their language proficiency is not so high, but they are confident to speak in English because they know that their story is interesting.
Oh, I really like that. There's
Yeah.
two key things I want to touch on that. So, or maybe three. So you said, in you talking about the different regions of Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
And students from different regions of Vietnam. I think it's so important to remember that within one country, there can be multiple cultures.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, all Vietnamese are the same,
Right.
everyone in Vietnam, right?
Right.
So I really like that and embracing all the different cultures from different parts of the country. The other part was when you said it gave them confidence because it was related to them,
Yeah.
something that was about them, and
Yeah.
it was something they thought was interesting. So, thank you for sharing that. I thought it was fascinating to see
Yeah.
how much it inspired your students when they had were able to bring in their own culture and their own stories into the English language classroom. Fantastic. So I'd like to move on to our next topic, which is how we can apply this. So you did really great research. Now let's talk about what it looks like in the classroom. So I guess for you, because you already have students, you chose which cultures to focus on. But in general, maybe what are some other ways that we can choose cultures or countries to focus on, or places to focus on? If if you, for example, you don't have students from a different background, how should we choose the countries and cultures? Oh, and sorry, please unmute again.
Yeah. So that is a very interesting question and also a demanding question too. Yeah. Nowadays as I said at the beginning, we interact with people from very different cultural backgrounds, and it is very hard for us to predict who we are going to meet, who we are going to work with. Like today, I can see that someone is from Greece. Yeah, I didn't know that I would meet a person from Greece. Yes, so it is very difficult for us if we just focus on a certain culture or countries. So that is why it is important for us to equip ourselves with intercultural competence. It means that the capacity to interact effectively and appropriately with people from different countries. However, it is still good if we can predict, if we can a certain individual may have a certain choice. Like at my university, some group of students learn not only English but also Japanese because they want to work in Japan or they work with Japanese people. So I advise them to spend more time to learn to learn to get cultural knowledge about Japanese people. And for some other groups, like ones who take part in a program from Germany, so it is important for them to know more about German culture, for example. But in general, it is better for us to prepare ourselves so that we can ready whenever we work with open people. Yeah.
Fantastic. So it sounds like, based on their interests. So some students are speaking German
Yeah.
and some people are studying about Germany. So you can choose German culture,
Yeah.
right? And also, some students are studying Japanese, so they can choose Japanese culture. Okay. My next question is, those students already had a culture or a country that they were interested. This is something I faced from primary school all the way to university. What if the students are just not interested? and they say to you, teacher, I don't care. So what can we do in that situation? And then please unmute again.
Yeah, you see, people may, yeah, so I can encourage them to be open to other culture by saying that as a natural tendency, people want to be understood and want to be loved, right? So if you, the student themselves, you also want to be understood by other people and want other people to show their love to you. So why don't we do the same thing to others, right? Yeah, so in that way, I mean that I want to focus on the empathy among them, right? So when they have when they see the need to understand and love other people, so they will be more curious and open to be and open to other culture, and they want to learn more about other cultures.
That's great. So I love that point of just starting with empathy, or that's kind of what in my country and the US we call the golden rule. It's kind of like treat others how you want to be treated. So everyone wants to be loved. So let's be understanding to other cultures. So I think that's a very good way to start, is to focus on, themselves, put themselves in their shoe, in the other person's shoes. Okay, great. And then from there, we can slowly build up the interest in other cultures. Okay, the next question I have is something I've seen a lot in Vietnam, and actually a lot of lecturers have asked me about this. So in culturally homogeneous classrooms, what can we do to introduce and appreciate other cultures? So that means when everyone in the classroom is from the same culture or very similar culture, and even the teacher is a Vietnamese person teaching English, so not a person from USA or America or India or something like that. How can we introduce that? The teachers ask me, how am I supposed to know what American culture is, or what is Singaporean culture? What is, South African culture? What can we do in those cases?
It is much more interesting with if we have a cosmopolitan classroom with people from different countries. However, I don't believe that we have such kind of culturally homogeneous. As you see, when we are from different families, we have a different culture as well. And at my university, Hanoi University of Science and Technology, we have a student from the countryside, from the cities, from the north, from the south, from the middle of Vietnam. So they have a different culture as well. And one of the exercise that I often ask them to do is to talk about their Tet holiday. So the Tet holiday in the countryside is very different from what happens in Hanoi. So I ask them to use their own their personal, their own lens to analyze and to see the different way of celebrating the holiday, different ways of interacting with other people, of getting ready for Tet holiday and so on. So they still have a very interesting story, and the story are true to themselves. So they have greater motivation to share the story with others. So I think that it doesn't matter if we have a classroom where all the learners and as well as the teachers speak the same language, because we still come from different communities. So we still have a different ways of living our lives.
I like that idea too. So it kind of goes back to that first point I made. Like, not everyone in Vietnam is the same, right? So there's not, everyone is not the same. So as you've just mentioned, you've got a mix of students from cosmopolitan and countryside backgrounds, and
Yeah.
comparing how each of them is different, right? So if the teacher doesn't know about another country, one place we can start is the differences within our own classroom and the cultural differences behind our maybe our different upbringings, or what kind of primary and secondary schools we've gone
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I want to take a look next at some of these framework documents. So the role of intercultural competence in English lessons. So you've been using the Voices coursebook for some time now with your students. And recently we've just gone through and mapped how the Voices units kind of correlate with intercultural competence. So with each unit, we can see what is important for students to be aware of, what skills are going to be helpful for them, what knowledge, what facts that they need to know, and then attitudes, how they should just feel in general and how that's going to help them. So let me find the elementary one, because we talked about this earlier. There's a unit on making small talk. Okay, so if you were to look at this framework, where would you start if you were going to include this in a lesson?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I often use the model suggested by Biram. And in his model, attitude is the first level, the first element. Yeah, when people are open to different cultures, they are curious to know more about different countries, and they can accept the difference. So they have a natural tendency to get knowledge, to know more about other people, other ways of life. And so I start with attitudes, and then I guide the students to get more knowledge by observing, by analyzing what they see, what they read from the materials, and they can apply what they have learned in the conversations, in doing doing activities that assembles the real interactions, so that they can gradually train themselves with the skills necessary.
Great. So yeah, I like that idea of like wanting to know new knowledge. They're naturally curious. So let's start with what do they want to know, right? And how is this going to help them? And then we can get that knowledge to kind of increase their awareness. Fantastic. So when we do this, okay, so if we're going to give a unit on on making small talk, there's probably going to be some new words or vocabulary that will come up for students. And so how can we give students, the scaffolding to express their opinions when there's so many new words to learn? So, right, we can't predict all of the things that they'll want to mention in small talk. So how do we help them? How do we give them the words when we can't predict it?
Okay, so yeah, of course, in any textbook, there are a lot of new words, especially to a mixed class like the one I'm having. But I like the vocabulary exercise in Voices. That is, we just focus on the keywords needed to understand a reading comprehension task or listening task. And there are also a lot of different activities guide the learners so that they can use in a controlled practice and then continue with a more realistic conversations. So in that way, they can gradually learn and be able to use the language they need. So I think that actually teaching English interculturally is not necessarily different from other approach of teaching English. The only thing teachers should bear in mind is that we do not teach the learners to imitate a certain system of language, but they can actively co-construct the system of language that can be used for people from different cultural backgrounds. So it is important for the teacher to guide them to use the new language to talk about things that are true to themselves and things related to their own life.
Sorry, thank you. I'm just taking some notes on some of your answers, which I really like. So yeah, just to summarize that, you know, we can start off with giving them the language in some reading comprehension, going over some basic words, and relating it to their own life. So they likely already know some of the words and terms that they're going to need to use. But also this concept of co-constructing the language together. So when students bring forward an idea, I think that's a really, and a new word, that's a really great way to highlight the meaning of a new word or a new vocabulary word for a new concept. So eventually the whole class can learn together, right? To co-construct the knowledge. So the next question, thank you for that, of how we can help prepare them. Functional language plays a big role in learning about other cultures, you know, especially if we want to complete some transactional communication, like ordering lunch in another country. How can we source this kind of language? So how do we choose the functions to include in some of these lessons?
Yeah, so I also like this idea, this question. You know, as I said earlier, it is very hard for us to predict where we will go to. So we cannot prepare everything. So I help my students to prepare strategies so that they can look for new sources of functional language themselves. For example, I ask them to imagine that they are going to China, Japan, Germany, and South Africa, so they can use ChatGPT, and they ask, how can we order a lunch in China or in other countries? So they can imagine the situation where they need functional language, so they can use ChatGPT to help them, and they can have role plays. Yes. So in that way, they know how they can prepare for themselves, and they don't have to depend on a certain textbook, or they don't have to depend on the teachers. They can be free to look for the thing they need themselves.
That's really great. I love that idea, especially again, because it's so organic and it's driven by the student's interest. So imagine what you want to do and imagine, okay, so what are the things that you need to do if you're going to South Africa or if you're going to China? And then I think using Chat GPT, that's actually, I hadn't considered that before, but I do like that. And I think that's a really great way to do some in-depth language study, because I think, at least in my experience, I know that Chat GPT is not always reliable. It can give some false information sometimes. So if we're asking our students to get information from there, we can really foster an in-depth study of the language or the form by asking them to analyze analyze the answers that Chat GPT gives back to them. So that's fantastic. I think it's what we've got here is, how do we choose the functional language? Find out what they need to do, and then we can choose the functions for those things. Okay, find out what they need to do or what they want to do. And then you mentioned role plays, which are great. They're a lot of fun, but they kind of invite a lot of feedback, right? So the question is, do I give feedback on the reality, the realisticness? What's the word? how realistic is the situation that they made? Do we give feedback on their grammar and their vocabulary? Do we give feedback on something else, their body language, their presentation skills? When you're doing this sort of intercultural communication practice, how do you give, what kind of feedback do you give to your students?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, in terms of teaching English interculturally, so as I mentioned earlier, there are two keywords, that is appropriately and effectively. So actually, I don't tell them whether this is appropriate or effective or not, but I ask them whether they think these are, I can pick up some piece of language, both the good use of language and not very good use of language. And I ask them questions so they reconsider whether these are appropriate and effective or not in some certain situation.
Right. Okay. So that's really good. So again, sticking with that initial framework that you started from Biriam, is that right? I'm can you tell me how to spell that name? Is it B-I-R-A-M?
BYRAM.
Great. So
Yes,
the
yeah,
audience will
exactly.
be able to do a little bit more reading on that. So
Yeah.
appropriateness and effectiveness of the communication. I think, or it sounds like when we're talking about how appropriate is that language, we're almost running into the topic or the subdiscipline of linguistics, which is called pragmatics or maybe sociolinguistics. How do students know if that's appropriate? So for example, saying, like, give me the check, please, at a restaurant versus can I have the check? How does a student know which one is appropriate and which one is not appropriate?
Yeah, thank you. So, though there are differences among culture, there are some general rules, and it is interesting that in Voices in a communication box, so you see that there are some the authors help us to analyze what are the good strategies for the language learner to adopt when they communicate with people from different cultures. So we can base on the strategies mentioned in the communication box so that they can navigate their language themselves and they can decide whether this is appropriate or not.
Great. So it sounds like, as teachers, we're going to need to give them some guidance as to what is
Yes,
appropriate or okay, not.
right.
So you've just mentioned that, and I want to go back and share part of the book. So you mentioned with the communication skill, maybe these will help us determine what is or is not appropriate.
Yeah.
So for example, right, this tip on making small talk is about keeping it positive. So we don't want to have small talk and, talk about all the problems that we're facing. It might be difficult to see. I'll zoom in. Yeah, so I think, yeah, you're right. I think our authors have put these together very well to help our students and to guide our students. All right. That's fantastic. And I just want to go back to a comment that was here in the chat. Making small talk, we also need to be aware that different cultures have different ways of making small talk and different times when it's appropriate to make small talk and different power levels, that are appropriate to make small talk as well. So when I showed this awareness, I just want to make that clear there as well. Being awareness of small talk is also being aware of our situations and the cultural context as well. Okay. So you did mention that you enjoy using these communication skills and that your students have been using voices for quite some time. So I did want to ask, what do your students think about the course book, and what has their reaction been? Is it great? Is it difficult? Is it brand new information? Is it something they've never experienced before?
Sorry, first of all, I want to describe my feelings about voices first, and then continue with my students' feelings. So for me, voices is like I can compare it with a beauty spot. And as a teacher, I'm a tourist guide, so I can see the beautiful things in voices. For example, the most impressive one are pictures and videos, and the stories. Next, the authentic stories. So they know that the stories are real and they are from inspiring people. And the next one is that the stories are close, though it is about people from different parts of the world, but they are still locally connected to the situation. So it is very interesting for teachers to guide them to see the beautiful things in the picture, and the beautiful things in the book. For example, I still remember a picture about Seoul, the capital city of Korea. So I asked them to observe the picture mindfully and tell teachers and the classmates anything they can see in the picture. So my students could do a lot of observations, and they list many different words about what they can see in the picture, the words about the shade of colors, the words about vehicles, and a lot of other things. So in that way, they see they can evoke what they know in English, and they tell with other people. And another thing that also interesting to both the teachers and the student, it is about the stories. So my student often say that, wow, I've never heard this, or I've never thought of this idea. And I do not only learn English, but I can also learn a lot of lessons from my life. Yes, so these are something that I can observe from my students. And I always think that I don't want they just see something interesting, something exciting from the book without thinking very carefully, deeply about those. That is why I often ask them to do some reflection after learning a certain lesson, how they can transform their lives. And that is why at the end of the course, my students often write reflection, not only about a certain lesson, but also from the whole course. And they say that they have learned a lot about the language, and also learn a lot about life, and especially they can be open to accept new things.
That's fantastic. I'm really so happy to hear that about your students' reaction. First of all, your reaction to the course book, and then finally the students' reaction to the course book. Just a couple of things to go over. I want to mention and share with the audience. Let me start with your topic. You said that you love to be like a tour guide and show them to all the nice places. And I think that's so important for teachers to remember. You may have the best book in the world, you may have the worst book in the world. It's going to be up to you as an instructor to guide your students through that. Okay, we can't just simply look at the page and do the activities, turn the page and do the activities. It's very much a guided experience, and I think that you've illustrated that very well. The second thing that you mentioned was, students really like the photos and the pictures. These are some of the more interesting pictures. Of course, we work with the National Geographic Society, and National Geographic explorers to source many of these photos that students are so interested in, and they get to talk about the pictures. Something I think is really useful for the audience is this webinar by another consultant, Alex Warren. He did a webinar called Visible Thinking Routines in the English Language Classroom, and he talks about the 3 dimensions of viewing. So like you've just described, personal viewing, like what can you see in the picture? And then there's 2 more ways of doing constructed activities. So you can take one photo like this and do 3 separate activities. So we're not just repeating every day, what can you see in the picture? Okay, next picture. Next, what can you see in the picture? So Alex will give you some really good tips about how you can make different kinds of activities with just a single picture. Great. So let's move on to our final topic, how to transition. So we've been talking about intercultural communicative competence. It's not something that we see in a ton of course books, and certainly maybe not course books from 10, 15, 20 years ago. So let's say if someone like you, a dean or a principal, is interested in taking this approach, and they want to start bringing intercultural competence to their students, what are some of the important things that they need to consider before making this decision?
Oh, sorry, can you repeat the question, please? What do you think the teachers should consider?
Sorry, first of all, like a school leader, a dean
Okay.
or a principal, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So as the principal or dean, I think that it is important. First of all, it is important for them to organize training workshops so that they can have the teachers, they can equip the teachers with necessary knowledge and skill needed to teach English interculturally. And it is also important for them to create such kind of a research community so that the teacher themselves can conduct more research into this field. And in that way, they can have a better understanding of what is going on and why it is important to take this approach. And for teachers themselves, I think, yeah, first of all, I want to mention a finding from a research project that I did in my PhD program. So from one piece of findings that from among the participants in my study, most of them have cross-cultural mindset, and only few of them have an intercultural mindset. So what is cross-cultural mindset? For those with cross-cultural mindsets, they can see that they can see cultures distinct and fixed, and they sorry. And for them, when learning a language, students have to cross from one culture to another culture, right? So it is actually, in my opinion, culture is not something fixed. It is a fluid. It is continuously being constructed by many different members of the community. So if we keep a cross-cultural mindset, it is harder for us to teach English interculturally. And that is why, in order to be successful in this approach, it is important for them to change from cross-cultural mindset into intercultural mindset. So in this one, in intercultural perspective, cultures, as I said, cultures are continuously being co-constructed. So people from different cultural backgrounds can co-construct, and they can form a new system of meaning. So in that way, we can interact, we can work together more effectively. And if you have an intercultural perspective, you may see that there's no difference between you and me. There is we, not you and me, and there's no otherness. And you can see the balance, as I said earlier, the idea raised by Thầy Thích Nhất Hạnh, Zen master and Vietnamese philosopher. So there should be a balance between self and other. So there's no difference, there's no distinction, no difference. And in that way, we can increase the empathy inside each individual. And when people have intercultural mindset, they can still gradually evolve to have a kind of meta-cultural perspective. And in that way, they can see that the whole planet is it's just like a painting, and they have in that painting, they may have many different colors with different shades of colors, maybe contrasting shade of colors, but these are not, but they don't conflict, but they can be interact, they can be support one another in a harmonious way. And that picture, that painting with different colors is much more beautiful than the one with just same colors.
Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. I really love it. There's a couple of things that I'd like to highlight for the audience. So you mentioned, if as a leader, you're trying to lead the whole school and prepare your teachers to do this and to help your students in this way. So your two points of advice for them were to set up some training workshops to equip them with the necessary knowledge and skills. So a little self-promotion, that's what I do. So if anyone's using voices and they're interested, feel free to reach out to me, and we're happy to do workshops with our partners. But the second part is setting up a research community to learn more and understand why. And I really want to drive that point home, because there's only so much that you can get out of a 1-hour training session or a 2-hour training session. So as much as I would love to go and stay with all of the teachers at all of the schools in Vietnam, and they can ask me a question anytime they want, it's not possible. So once we set up the necessary knowledge and skills, then the teachers can keep going with that research community. So I think that's really fantastic advice for school leaders. And then as well, you've given some really great advice for teachers, which is to help, not have this cross-cultural mindset. It's you versus me, but to join together. It's us. So it's an intercultural mindset. And we're all part of the same planet, same picture, the same painting of the planet, and all the colors complement each other. I think that is so fantastic. So thank you very much. So I have just a quick treat for the audience, and then we'll say goodbye. So if you are in the audience, you might have recognized a familiar name in the chat box. We have Chia Swan Chong here with us today, and actually she's one of the authors of the Voices series. So she has said she would be willing to share some of her thoughts on this topic as well. So we have just a few minutes for Chia to share her thoughts. I'm gonna go ahead and pass over to her to share her thoughts, and let's listen to directly from the author. All right.
Hello, hi.
Hi, yeah, perfect. I can hear you. Welcome back.
Hello, quite unexpected to be here.
Yeah, I was really excited. I saw you in the in the chat box or in the participants list. I was like, oh wow, I better get up to speed, or I better not make any mistakes.
I was really excited when I saw your post on LinkedIn about this webinar, and I signed up immediately, partly because I think that, you know, in the English language teaching industry, in the few times when you hear the word culture being mentioned, or when you hear, you know, about webinars about intercultural skills, a lot of it tends to focus on something quite superficial, like, you know, the kind of level of, oh, the Chinese think that red is a lucky color. That sort of superficiality. Sometimes it's about cultural representation in course books, and very, very seldom do we actually get a real deep dive into how culture can affect interactions, communication, relationship building. And so when I saw your post, I was extremely excited, and then attending the webinar and listening to an expert talk about intercultural competence in such a deep and useful way was it made me very, very happy that this is a conversation that's happening in our industry. And I think it's about time. I really think that it's about time our industry wakes up to the fact that being able to have those, to help students develop those important skills and awareness of communicating across cultures is so essential, especially in this time of artificial intelligence, where transactional communication can easily be done with translation devices, with ChatGPT. But what really AI cannot do for us, not yet anyways, is spot intercultural misunderstandings, help us to understand other cultures, help us to communicate more effectively and build relationships with other people from other cultural backgrounds. And so I think this is such an important conversation to have in today's world.
Fantastic. Yeah, I totally agree. And I got to thank you for lending your expertise to this course book series so that we can actually have these conversations with our students. So there you have it, direct from Miss Chia Swan Chung. This is clearly a very important thing that's going to be affecting our students for the rest of their life. So thank you so much, Chia, for sharing your perspective on that. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. All right, so just before we end, I want to thank everyone for sticking around so far. I do have a couple of things to share with you. So these mapping documents that show how the Voices coursebook helps students develop awareness, skills, knowledge, and attitudes to approach intercultural communication. We have these available for you exclusively. Let me see. I'm trying to find the chat box and I have 8,000 buttons. So you here are the first people to get access to these. So go ahead and take a look. You can click on the URL that I've just sent in the chat box, or you can scan the QR code that is on your screen for that. Okay, so I've sent the URL in the chat box, so go ahead and use that. The next thing I just want to quickly mention is that we have an upcoming webinar that's really related to what Chia just mentioned, especially, you know, the age of AI and the digital era, right? So this is a national holiday in Vietnam, so I hope that you will be free to join this webinar. If you're not traveling, you're not too busy traveling, you can hopefully take some time to join this webinar. This is Will Lashett. He's a academic consultant and trainer based in Singapore. And he's going to be talking about helping students see the difference between facts and things that are fraudulent or fake. All right, and finally, you can always follow us on Facebook. We hold many webinars, so just pay attention to our Facebook page, and you can keep up to date with all of the events that we're going to be putting on in the future, both webinars and face-to-face events in some of the cities around Vietnam. So that's facebook.com/NGLearningVN. You can see that there, and there's also a QR code. So to wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much to Chia and then to our guest, Miss Miss Hang. And I'll let you go with our moderators' takeaway from the event: compassion and understanding. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Have a fantastic evening. Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.